Hello, I am Ruben Bressler, and welcome to the first Open Series of 2014 here in Indianapolis. It's a huge event, over 700 players, 11 rounds of Swiss today. And there are a few people in the room, even with that many people in the room, who have more impressive beards than I do. So I decided to invite one of them into the sideboard here. Four-time Star City Games Open champion and recent Super IQ champion, Chris VanMeter, joins me in the sideboard. How you doing, Chris?
Pretty good. We braved the elements last night to get here. Fortunately, we are Caucasian when we arrived.
Ah, there you go. Got protection from snow, permanence,
yes.
and we're able to make it here. And you have something interesting here, you and BBD?
Yes, and BBD. I
Chris,
talked him into playing forests and mountains.
That's quite the feat in and of itself. You're playing green-red monsters here today. This deck is a little bit reminiscent of decks from recent past, most specifically Brian Kibler's World Championship deck. In that it's a green-red aggro deck, but it has none of the cards that you'd think of when you're recently playing green-red. So no Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx.
Yep.
No Burning Tree Emissary.
Nope.
And with Mutavault.
With Mutavault.
So talk to me about where this deck sort of came from and why you decided to go with this particular strategy today.
Well, it was one of the decks that top-aided the Grand Prix in Shizuoka. So everybody was focused on this wacky Esper Humans deck that 15 won the Swiss portion and then got second. But I really fell in love with this green-red deck. He had Clan Defiance that I ended up replacing with Flesh Blood due to a Brad Nelson influence. But the deck is just awesome. Playing a lot more Xenaghosts than the previous incarnations of the green-red deck. Had a couple of Mutavaults to give you some additional ways to attack. And I was even able to, in the Super IQ, make a Domri emblem, play a Mutavault, and attack for 4.
That's pretty awesome. So let's talk about a couple of the specific points that you just touched on. First of all, we'll talk about Flesh Blood, which was a Brad Nelson creation from Pro Tour Dublin.
Yes.
And it serves much the same purpose here. Also teaming up with Gore Clan Rampager,
correct.
Which, much like Dre, I think people have forgotten about.
Absolutely.
And so that's able to really just kill people completely out of nowhere.
Yes.
So you have a combo element to your aggro.
Absolutely. Not only does it allow you to combo with Gore Clan Rampager and Flesh Blood, but so many people just think they're safe sitting behind their Desecration Demons right now, and even just like a 3/3 Scavenging Ooze with a Blood Rush will kill it, and you still get to keep your creature around.
Yeah. And this deck is, like I mentioned, much more like the Kibler deck from the World Championship in that you have both Elvish Mystic and Sylvan Caryatid to be able to power out bigger monsters earlier on.
Correct.
This deck is green-red monsters, and you do have some pretty big monstrous creatures, Stormbreath Dragon and Pelucranos.
Correct.
Why did you end up going with those guys?
Well, previously it was just a no-brainer when you had Nykthos and Burning Tree Emissary. It was very easy to get a lot of mana to monstrous the creatures. But just the basic stats of the cards are good enough by themselves. Polycranos is a 5/5 for 4, Dragon's a 4/4 haste for 5 with protection from white, and then at some point you will be able to monstrous them, and it just blows them out. It's just very, very good.
Yeah, those are the creatures that are the best just threats to put onto a board, but you also have more difficult to answer threats in not only a flash creature in Boon Satyr, which is also flash aura in Boon Satyr, but you also have a trio of planeswalkers. The red-green sort of the regulars, I suppose, but but in a new shell. So why did you decide to go with Domri Raid, Garruk, and Xenaghost?
Well, Domri is just a no-brainer. I think that Domri is very close on power level with even Jace Architect of Thought and the current format. It's one of those planeswalkers that will win the game for you if it goes unimpeded. A lot of times they just don't have an answer for it, and 4 turns later you make an emblem and you can't lose. And then Xenaghost is just very underrated right now in my opinion. I feel like he really hasn't had a home or a place to shine, and this deck is absolutely perfect for him. Making 2/2s to lock down a demon, you can just make a bunch of 2/2s and beat a Hallowed Fountain deck, and sometimes you can even make a bunch of mana and monstrous your Polycranos and kill their team.
Yeah, Brad Nelson described it as Huntmaster of the Fells for the new format, which was just sort of 2 bodies.
Yeah.
It was like they sort of killed off the 1/1 or the 2/2 and then dealt with the Xenaghost some other way, and so it was a 1.5 for 1 or a 2 for 1 most of the time, which is pretty much all you want, especially in a deck like this where your 1s are better than their 1s for the most part. Eventually they'll run out of Heroes Downfalls, and you'll end up with a Garruk or a Pelucranos or something even bigger than just a Xenaghost.
Absolutely, and not only that, but much like Huntmaster of the Fells, when you play Xenaghost, you become the controller of the pace of the game, and it puts all the pressure on your opponent to react to what you're doing. Like, they have to start making actions much earlier than they normally would like to, because the card threatens to take over the game.
Right. So that's the main deck. You have plenty of mana to be able to cast your spells as well. How many lands are you running?
23 lands, 4 Mystic, 3 Carrier.
So almost half the deck is mana, and
Yep.
if you count Xenagos, half the deck is mana.
Yep.
And you've
Very
also
much
got-
like the Zvi Mashwitz style of deck building. We have mana and awesome permanents.
Yep, exactly right. And so you've got more awesome permanents in your sideboard.
Yes.
Specifically, you have Mistcutter Hydra and Rurik Thor, both of which are very good against the control decks that are popular right now.
Absolutely. Mistcutter Hydra, I think, is probably the best sideboard card in Standard currently. The deck is, or the format is so warped around blue-white control, Esper control, and mono blue, and then you have Black Devotion on the side. But Mistcutter Hydra is just very good against those decks. There aren't very many answers that they can play against Mistcutter Hydra, so just aggressively casting one for even 3 or 4 will get enough damage to where you can just go Clan Rampage or your Hydra and not have to worry about an Azorius Charm blowing you out.
Right, or even something like Detention Sphere. It's
Yep.
it just comes down post Supreme Verdict after they've been like, all right, we killed a mana guy and we killed a Pelucranos or whatever, or a Scavenging Ooze. We've 2 for 1.
Yep.
But now we're taking 1,000,000 from these haste creatures every turn because you've still got the Stormbreath Dragons after sideboard. And then now you also have this protection from blue other haste creature.
Yep.
It's just able to put so much pressure on them. Rurik Thor attacks from a completely different angle.
He does. He attacks for 6 every turn, whether you like it or not. But he also punishes them for playing answers for your card. So most of the time, when you actually resolve a Rurik Thor, it's almost a guaranteed 6 points of damage. And even if they were to tap out for an Elspeth and make some tokens just to try and attrition you out for it, you can just Rampage them and they die.
Yep. Very good. And another sideboard card is Plummet, which I think is an interesting choice, and it makes a lot of sense because you're able to deal with 2 of the biggest threats in the format right now, which is Night Veil Spectre and Desecration Demon.
Absolutely. You'll hear me talk a lot about Desecration Demon. I feel like it's the best card in the mono black deck against these creature-based strategies, and Plummet just handles with it very, very well. Plus, Night Veil Spectre is it's just a very good card, and Plummet gives you a way to kill it.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly the kind of cards you want. And the 3 most popular creatures in Standard right now, I think, are Night Veil Spectre, Master of Waves, and Desecration Demon.
Yep.
You have a lot of ways to deal with Master of Waves in the main deck, either giving trample to your Gorklan Rampager, just being bigger in general, and also Pelucranos is able to answer it.
Yeah, Polykranos is very good against Master.
And Domri Raid doesn't really answer it directly, but it's able to out-card advantage people early in the game, which is where you want to be able to answer it. So you're already 1-0.
Yep.
We're able to film this deck tech because you were 1-0 so quickly.
Yes.
This deck is able to win very quickly.
Yep.
And pretty much out of nowhere. They can be at 16 and just be like, Gorklan Rampager, Fleshblood you.
Yes.
I guess you're dead.
Yep.
And so, this deck looks spectacular. Devotion decks have sort of been the most popular decks the last couple months, and before that, 3 and 4 color control decks, because of the mana available from Return to Ravnica block, were most popular. But all the while, 2 color aggro decks and mostly Gruul aggro decks have been able to keep those in check, and this looks like the next in the line to be able to do that. Looks like a ton of fun to play. It's obviously very powerful.
Yes.
And you also get to take a nap in between rounds, or do this.
It's
which
perfect.
Is nice. I get to talk to my friend.
Yeah, I mean, with 11 rounds, I'm happy I'm tapping forests and mountains, that's for sure.
There you go, absolutely. Chris VanMeter, thank you so much for joining me on the sideboard.
Thank you.
Chris VanMeter with his Green-Red Monsters deck here at SCG Indy. We're going to have coverage here all day, so stay tuned to SCG Live with Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, and myself. So come on back.